Hello, friends. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. I can't tell you how excited I am. Planning this program was so exciting, and it allows us to virtually meet and listen to the inspiring words of 8 amazing young poets who are doing such powerful work in their communities and beyond through poetry as their chosen advocacy. Before we launch into the program proper, I just want to say also thank you to the Muse, our host tonight. The Muse Writers Center is the top literary center in Virginia. Their winter and spring 2022 class schedule just dropped. So you can look at the website, the-muse.org, for more classes, events, and outreach programs. And I want to give a big thank you to Susan Deutsch, Program Manager of the Muse, for making things so easy for us. So then, I just also wanted to say that a couple of days ago, I had the pleasure of announcing 24 Virginia young poets in the community who will carry out their winning proposals for public poetry projects in their communities between now and the end of the 2021-22 school year. But today's program is one of several that I have been developing as part of my 2021 Poet Laureate Fellowship from the Academy of American Poets, with support from the Mellon Foundation and in collaboration with the Poetry Society of Virginia. This reading and conversation is also made possible with important support from the Muse, from Urban Word New York, and in particular, I'd like to acknowledge Urban Word's Executive Director, Chanel Gabriel, as well as Teens with a Purpose. Thank you. It means so much. Now, before I go on to introduce our featured poets one by one, after which they will come up to read, I'd like to ask Deirdre Love, who is the founder and executive director of Teens with a Purpose, to say a few words about her organization, which was founded in 1996 and which since 2014 has made it possible for young poets from Southeastern Virginia, or Hampton Roads as we say here, to participate in the initiatives of the National Youth Poet Laureate program and competition created by affiliate organization Urban Word. Thank you so much to all our partners. So to start things off, I had the pleasure of introducing, as I said, our featured poets. And our first one is Serena Yang, who is a poet and writer who serves as the 2021 New York City Youth Poet Laureate and the Northeastern Regional Finalist for the 2021 National Youth Poet Laureate title. So exciting to learn about these things. She was born in Singapore, raised in Queens, a first-generation Chinese-American immigrant, and her work reflects myriad identities and moves towards the idea of our collective liberation. A former Resist, Recycle, Regenerate Fellow with the WOW or WOW Project, 2019 Youth Poet Ambassador at Urban Word New York City, and a member of the Beyond Acceptance Research Collective. She also performed at the 2021 New York City COVID Memorial Ceremony alongside the New York City Mayor and the Philharmonic, and she has appeared on NPR, Washington Post, New York Times, New Yorker, a host of other wonderful venues. And she says she approaches art in all its mediums as the, I quote, the fire, the fuel, and food for change. And she believes imagination and storytelling are critical to justice work. And she writes always with the knowledge that a better world is possible. And I can't think of a better, keynote for everything we are doing here this afternoon. So Serena, welcome. Thank you so much. And the stage is yours.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm really excited to share a few poems and also talk a little bit about what I've been up to these past few years. Becoming the New York City Youth Poet Laureate was a big surprise to me. I didn't know that I would be spending my year doing that, but that's been most of my time. I did take a leave from school, so I had a lot of time to write on my own and do events like this. Unfortunately, most of which were on Zoom, but it was still a lot of fun and I learned a lot about performing and about writing. I've also been involved with organizing the WOW project, of which I was a fellow, an RR fellow in 2019. I've just returned to work as a program coordinator. So I'm now coordinating the program for a new generation of fellows, and I'm continuing to do that now and hopefully into the future. So that's one of the things I'm looking forward to next year as I'm transitioning out of my role as New York City Youth Poet Laureate. I will share a few poems today. The first one is a poem that I like to start with because I think it is a good introduction to my work as a whole. And it is written after Franny Choi's poem, Glossary of Terms, which is the first poem in her book, Soft Science. After Franny Choi. Whale song, noun, meaning survival contingent on song. Upon learning of the whale song, humans hung up their harpoons, bloodless monster become gentle giant, Moby Dick become Moby Dick, meaning whales sing for no reason at all. See also haunts and hauntings, heart sounds and other autopsies. The sounds our bodies make when we're asleep, the secrets we tell for no one to hear. Antonym, the loneliest animal in the world is the 52 Hertz whale. The loneliest animal in the world is the scientist who waits all year for whaling season, only to hear a song. Antonym, the tongue, the hollow mouth. Origin, the loneliest animal in the world sings only when you're listening. Survival contingent on them knowing we exist. Dreams of being, a full sentence. Thank you. The next poem I want to share is a poem I wrote during the workshops leading up to the Youth Poet Laureate commencement in my year. And as I'm passing the mantle on to the amazing Elizabeth Schwartz this year, I've been thinking about that time in my life a lot. So I want to share this poem that I wrote during the fall of 2020. Self-portrait of my poems as the fall. Every day, the birds come to knock their beaks against the glass, thinking it air. Every day, my pen scratches over the water-stained pages of my notebook and thinks itself a vein, my blood turning to ink, a measured spillage, call writer's block a blood clot. In January, I lay with my legs lifted above my heart, my knee an impatient swelling, veins pushed close to the surface, my skin a thin sheet of river ice. We call this healing. Last week, my friend asked me my plans for the fall. Before I could answer, she said I meant the autumn, not, the end of everything. October shakes summer loose in a shower of brown leaves. My mother's cucumbers wither away and the wicker basket hollows in our kitchen. One day, a baby blue bird dashes itself against the glass, then another. This one a few days later, and less blue. After the third, we draw the curtains so the birds will stop mistaking our home for the world. After the fifth, I realize the birds only come when the light goes. 2 summers ago, I was a child. 2 summers ago, I dreamed I leapt off the edge of the world and discovered flight. This October, I am as old as the brown tree, roofless and stolid beside my mother's cucumbers, and still a child, and still so fond of the dark. What are your plans for the end of everything? I mean, the turning of the seasons. I tell my friend that I will spend the fall writing my small blue poems, but this time I am thinking of a long life, of what happens when the ink dries and all there's left is to lift the swollen limb above the heart and wait for blood to run home. Every day, the birds come to press their bodies closer to themselves. That smudge in the dark glass that looks like a ghost limb, one you didn't know you'd lost until it appears as reflection, until what you see through the window is not a home or the world, but only the dark. And there, your own image. My poems dream of a likeness in the glass that becomes real, even as the body retreats and carries away its heart. Sometimes I mistake glass for air, blood for ink, the fall for the fall. Sometimes I am a blue bird that forgets. Thank you. Seeing the snaps. Thank you all so much. I'm feeling the support. Let's see. I have a bit of time left, so I want to share a few. I will share one more longer poem, but first I wanted to share a few short love poems. I started reading a lot of love poetry over the pandemic, just being in quarantine on like Instagram, looking at love poems. I really recommend it. It made me much happier, I think, and it made me also reflect on my work and my writing. And when I say my work, I don't just mean my writing, I mean my writing, my learning, my schooling, also my organizing, all of that together. I think it made me look at all of that in a different light. So I decided to write a series of short love poems that are very unedited. So I'll share a few now. Poem number 5. Today I took all my pain and put it in a love poem. Today I took all my pain and drew a smile onto your face. Someone said matter can neither be created nor destroyed, but I can transfigure anything. I can pull love out of a hat and find an old friend in the eye of a rabbit. Last year, love. New year, love. Puppy, love. Love like a yellowing bruise. Love like a sidewalk crack waiting to catch me tripping. Love like a new house with all its windows thrown wide open. My love. Today, I wrote a poem about you. Today, I became a breeze and blew through this new house with you. Poem number 7. Today, in our hands, firecrackers catching light, or just the sound of plastic crushing into a new shape. You throw them one by one at the neighbor's trash can on the other side of the road, and of course, you would be this hungry. And of course, each shape will unravel anyway. Hold still in the air. Now a leaf, a skipped stone, the warm and flightless body of a mammal, a thing that knows only to fall, no matter how many times you light it up, wishing for flight. You're littering on my lawn again. Today, rough wood scraping the soft pink bottoms of our feet. There, in the early morning, dew collects like snow globes on our skin, nose pressed against the glass. You look like a picture, freeze frame. I could never touch you. Today, your lips scuttling my name, your mouth a salt shaker, your body a restless and trembling topography, and still, I know these coastlines so well. I know what pulls the tide in. Today, our mosquito-bitten calves, flaring pink, yellow, dawn, countdown to noon. 2 girl shapes on a green porch. 1, tell me you remember. 1, remember. 1, remember. Poem number 2. I'd forgotten the way you say you and want and all your S's and T's and my name. I haven't heard my name said like this in so long. I'd forgotten what it felt like to have someone hold my heart on their tongue and not cut it to pieces. I would pull out my heart just to place it on your tongue. When I'm touched, my skin turns to goose flesh. When you touch me, a flock of geese in my stomach take flight all at once, their long necks pointed homeward. Do you see what I'm trying to say? I didn't know it would be like this. I didn't know you would be in this body with me, sharing this pair of lungs, punched breathless, and these hands made reckless, and these feet pointed always towards you. I left my fears on the cliff edge and cannonballed into the sea. And now, every day, I am either drowning or learning to swim. Sometimes, motion sick from new car smell, I roll the windows down and sit, sick, in the thick fog of early spring. I couldn't hide if I tried. You make me want to come out of whatever hibernation I've been in all my life. It's not a matter of wanting. It's just that the sun is high and the snow has melted and the grass is greening and something in me is stirring awake. I don't want to drown. I want to learn this as well as I have ever learned anything. I want to fill it with enough breath to last more than one lifetime. Do you see what I'm trying to say? Thank you. I really recommend love poetry as a window through which to look at your work and to study your craft. Maya Angelou famously said, I consider myself a love poet. And obviously Maya Angelou wrote many things that we might not consider to be just love poetry, but that's something to sit on and think about, of thinking of your entire body of work as love poetry and as work that is about love. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Serena. I mean, you know, those poems and how they remind us that when we are at the edge of any kind of precarity, all we have to consider is flight and love, how to work those things out. And those are the basic things. So thank you so much. Before we move on with our readers, I think Deirdre is here, and I'd like to invite her up to talk about Teens with a Purpose briefly. I know you've done so much great work with all our young writers, our young artists in the Hampton Roads area in this part of Southeastern Virginia. And I'm very happy to have you join us and say a little bit about what else you're doing, what's up ahead.
Oh, thank you. The first thing I have to say is thank you and thank the Muse for this great event. This is amazing. Every time we bring young people's voices to the forefront, and you know, literary arts is so important. It's such a platform that transforms lives and makes life better and changes the world. And so that's really what Teens with a Purpose does. We use the arts as a platform to empower young people to make changes in their personal lives, to support their peers, to help transform their community and the world. So the poets have the platform like Poet Laureate. They also have the Hampton Roads Youth Poets. They use their poems to go before legislators to influence policies. They use their poems to encourage people to vote at voting events, using literary arts, using language, using youth voice to have an impact. They use their poems to impact their peers to make better choices. So the work that we all do is so important. And the last thing I'd like to say is that we're launching the 2022 Youth Poet Laureate program for Southeast Virginia, the beginning of January. So writers and lovers of poetry, please spread the word. It's going to be, I'm hoping, bigger than ever. And I know this 2021, the poets have had lots of great opportunities to share their voice and share their words, like today. And I'm just grateful to be in this space with like-minded people and young poets. Go in and tell your truth. And I'm looking forward to the rest of the event. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Serena. How would young poets apply? Can you point them to a website? Where should they go?
Yes. So our website is twpthemovement.org, and that's where they would apply. And right now, we don't have the applications up yet. I just shared an overview of what's required for it, and I'll reshare it with you so you can share with anyone who's here today. And then starting January 3rd, we'll begin accepting applications, and we'll have poetry and performance workshops at they'll have an opportunity to do a showcase at the Wells Theater that will be live streamed, and then participate in the Youth Poet Laureate program and our poetry season as well. And there are cash prizes this year.
Yeah, amazing. So I see that Susan has just dropped the link in the chat. So please retrieve that and mark your calendars. January 3, start sending those applications in. All right, moving on. Thank you again, Deirdre. Our next poet is Trinity Allen, who is the Hampton Roads Youth Poet Laureate Ambassador for the city of Portsmouth. She is an IC Norcom High School Honors graduate who completed the early college program at Tidewater Community College, where she received an associate's degree in social science. Trinity is currently studying political science as a freshman at Howard University. Through her writing, Trinity has always sought to empower those within her community with her words. And welcome again, Trinity. And tell us, what have you been up to in this very challenging almost 2 years? And how has poetry been something that you have leaned on in order to help others also through this time? Before you read, very quickly.
Hello. Yes, during the pandemic, it has been a challenging time for all of us, but I will absolutely say that poetry has been like my guiding factor through all of this because I am a people-oriented person. So to be able to reach people through my poetry and help them to be inspired through such a challenging time as the ambassador is just an honor for me, honestly, because it means the most to me that people are inspired by what I say and want to hear what I have to say, respect the platform that I've come from. So that's really what I've been doing over this challenge. I guess I can transition into my poetry.
Yes, yes, please. We are so excited to hear your poems.
Preaching to the people, no longer to the choir. Speaking about my faith publicly, except no agreeing voices, no comforting claps, no silent amens, it's only me. Speaking to influence the masses, mirroring the past preachers such as Barbara Jones, who was born and raised in Houston and raised her voice for laws to be changed for segregation. Or John Lewis, a freedom rider with a motor of motivation leading marches throughout the nation and drove to succeed. Or Harry T. Moore, who did more than what's in a textbook. Those who spoke when not spoken to, protested with no violence, pursued and breaking silence, protectors of the people, our rights and what we stand for, demanding justice, not unjust war. Justice for racial bondage, chains that strained minds, psychological tethering into thinking that we were lesser, inadequate, below, beneath. It was supposed to be life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Instead, it became death trap set pursuits of fear. His blood, their sweat, no tears shed by those who are sick of crying. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more mourning or crying or pain. For the old order of things has passed away. This was the revelation, a revelation that never turned into a revolution. So when I speak, I want change. Change from unarmored souls being feared by colonizers of the century, but our words are sharper than the swords they wield, piercing to the divisions of soul and of spirit, of joints and of marrow, discerning the thoughts and intentions of the heart. So I encourage you to speak, not always in thundering shrills of righteousness, but knowing what's right. For the spirit God gave us does not make us timid, but it gives us power. Power to do things we would not be able to do without him. Power to no longer have streets as battlefields. Power to no longer be chained in stereotypes, but have liberty. Power to speak victory. Power. Speak up, speak out, because only you can speak your truth. We will always have power, even in our youth. Speak with power. Thank you.
That was just full of fire. Thank you so much. Such an urgent message for all time, for our time in particular. Thank you. I am going to call up next to read Ayana. Ayana Askew is a senior at the historic Booker T. Washington High School in Norfolk, Virginia. And for the past 3 years, she attended the Governor's School for the Arts on the theater track. So you see our young poets are multidisciplinary and are just all over the place and just very interested in so many things. It's so exciting. She's a straight A honor student with a 4.45 GPA. She enjoys playing tennis, swimming, writing poetry, playing the piano, and she recently won gold in the NAACP Act So competition in the poetry performance category, both locally and nationally, for the second year in a row. Wow, amazing. Her favorite quote is, when life gives you 100 reasons to cry, show life that you have 1,000 reasons to smile. And please welcome again, Ayana.
Thank you so much for that introduction. And as everyone else started off, over the pandemic, it has definitely been a challenge, being that I haven't had, as for all of us, pretty much as much social interaction. So I've definitely leaned on poetry as one of my many outlets. And so I've recently, I think poetry has such a power, like Trinity was saying, like when you speak, how people actually listen and respect your platform. And then they also take in the words that you're saying. And so it just ultimately promotes change. So I actually have two poems that I would like to read. So my first one is one that I wrote over the summer for Juneteenth, that I actually wrote for in partnership with Urban Word. So it's called Invisible Freedom. I once read that hope is the thing with feathers. Its resilience is able to weather life's storms, the waves that form and come crashing on African shores, sweeping us away into the ocean of sorrows created by the salty tears of our ancestors, by the incessant rain of the white man reigning supreme, but somehow, instead of drowning, they treaded on their hopes and their dreams as they journeyed to America. Their crowns of royalty became crowns of thorns. Their broken backs became America's backbone. Taken from their home and thrown into bondage was Kome, 18 years old, 59 inches, arrived in 1819 on the slave ship Juanita. Kose, a little girl only 24 inches tall, a baby still learning to crawl. History was not written in stone, which is why the gravestones were often unmarked. It was written in the scars of bodies used as whipping posts, bound in the blood shed on American soil. They try to white out our history, but the truth will always bleed through. They can't erase pain because it was never written in pencil. Not only must we remember the pain, but we must remember the strength. We must remember the thing with feathers that reminds us that after a storm comes a calm. After a rainy day, the sun will peep through the clouds, shedding light on our future. Hope became an eternal flame, sparked by the heartfelt freedom song sung despite captivity, sparked by June 19th, 1865, when Texas ended slavery and all enslaved people were free, sparked by the shouts of Jubilee echoing across the United States, sparked by the strength and the resilience that it took for Harriet Tubman's feet to go from running from slave masters to walking into freedom, sparked by Phyllis Wheatley's words setting the stage for me to walk on. But like Minister Louis Farrakhan said, emancipation is freeing a bird into America's cage, but hope is the explanation for why the caged bird still sings, why the grass can push its way through the concrete, why the blues was born through the bellies of sadness, and why I, a Black girl, can live in the world freer than they could ever imagine. I once read that hope is the thing with feathers that is able to weather life's storms. So on this Juneteenth, look down and see that we stand on the wings of phoenixes. And even in the midst of our Jubilee, let's be grounded in the roots of history and not wait for freedom to be bestowed, but rather to bestow upon ourselves the true freedom of our mind, spirit, and body. And then just my second and last poem is one that I wrote, I think actually this past January. And so my grandfather, he passed in last December in 2020. So I wrote this in honor of him. It's called Letter to My Grandfather. Dear Granddaddy, I know that death is inevitable. The pain it brings is unbearable, the heartbreak irreparable. Once face to face, now I'm facing your burial. I always looked up to you. Now I'm looking 6 feet down, my feet stuck to the ground. I wish I could fly with you to heaven, but I'm ground bound, bound to the earth by life, while death carries you to the heavens, or as you like to call it, up yonder. But I wish I could hold on to you a little bit longer, feeling your warm embrace once again, my chin resting on your shoulder, the warmth of your soul encapsulating me, until you pull away and gently place your hands on my face and call me beautiful. You told me I was beautiful before I even realized it. You saw me through real eyes before my eyes were prime enough to see my beauty. You told me you loved me before I knew what love was. That was something you always gave more than enough of. Unwavering, unrelenting, never-ending love. Right now, I need your love. Send down a dove from heaven to comfort me and to remind me that you are here even when I can't see it. You are here. You hear every word I say. You see the tears rolling down my face, and you remind me that you're in a better place, that you walk on pavements made out of gold, that heaven is even better than the stories we're told. that you're the happiest you have ever been, and then you smile and say, Ayana, don't worry, you'll see me again. You remind me that you're proud of me because you know I only hear it from you. You were the reason I worked hard and pushed through life's ups and downs, because I knew if I called on you, you would always be around to pick me up when I felt like giving up, giving me the motivation I needed when I felt I wasn't enough. You were my rock, my biggest supporter, and until I see you again, just know that I love you. Sincerely, your granddaughter.
Oh, amazing. Thank you. I love how
Thank you.
that you read, there's so much of this resonance. I hear voices of others that have come before us, that have come before you. And it's amazing how those kinds of voices find us, especially when we need them. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Moving on. Thank you so much, Ayana. Our next reader is Sainey Ceasay, who is the 2021 Prince George's County Youth Poet Laureate. She is an alumni of Joe's Movement Emporium's Creative Works class of 2020 and a current member of Words Beats and Life's DMV Slam team. Her poetry touches on topics like mental health, their Blackness and identity as a Gambian American, gender issues, and social injustice. She seeks to find and build community through her poetry and help others to be encouraged to write in order to find emotional healing in their own lives. Sainey, thank you so much for being here to read for us.
Hi, thank you for having me. Man, this past 2 years has really been wild. I actually recently turned 20, which has been really tricky because it came into the pandemic 18. So that's been really fun. I guess this whole pandemic, poetry has definitely been one of the things that has gotten me through. I went from being a poet ambassador to a laureate, which has been really cool. And I've been doing a lot of volunteering as well. One of my favorite things is volunteering at my local community garden, which has really been an escape for me and has helped me to really just put something into my day that I do just because I enjoy it. So that's been really nice. I'm gonna read some poems now. The first one that I want to share with you is titled Questions, after Jamal May's poem called There Are Birds Here. And I wrote it kind of as a way to challenge misconceptions that people have about Prince George's County. Questions I have for those that live outside of PG County. When I say PG County, do you imagine the boy hoping to shoot his basketball far enough for someone to tell him he can be something? Do you think of offbeat rapping, using SoundCloud to cloud out the sounds of hunger or wanting? When I mention the crabs, do you see the bucket too? Clawing back the wings of those who wish to fly, and not just a really good meal that invites the family in and the neighbors in this poem. Maybe the crack is just coming from the shells. When I say he beats his feet, do you think it's for a beat down, or do you see the dancing too? Limbs lifting and twisting. Does your mind's eye allow you to see his joy? When I say there is swamp water, do you see us as the lotuses and lily pads, or do you find us under the water gasping, submerged in a mud we want to rise from? If I told you about the red line, do you see blood separating us from places we're told we don't deserve to exist in, or would you just think that somebody is going home? Last questions. Thank you. The next poem that I want to share is titled Smiling Coast, and I say that this poem is about things that I inherited. I come from loud people who laugh with all their teeth, smiles as bright as the clothes they wear, and I inherit their pride. Everything I know has been passed down through word of mouth, so I try to remember everything I am told as if I will have to repeat it one day. It is in my muscle memory to hold on to everything that survives. Jollof rice comes from Wolof people. I know because my people are Wolof people. I chew the rice between my teeth and swallow my shame along with it. I learn to smile instead. I smile instead of saying when I am uncomfortable. Someone mistakes my kindness for an invitation and attempts to follow me home. I inherit contrast. I inherit my auntie's face with the stars in her smile and the night in her skin. When I get teased for disappearing into the sky, I wish I said I was the sky instead. I wish I told them how sweet it is to be claimed by the cosmos instead. I asked my dad why they call Gambia a third world country and watch his mouth become a portal. I inherit a body that changes colors depending on how the light shifts. I learn a smile can be a bridge, can be a cage, can be just enough to keep too many questions away. I learned that sometimes a smile is a shield. Sometimes it makes all the wrong people too comfortable. I hear my aunt getting yelled at from inside the room and walk out with a full smile across her face. To shapeshift hurt until it has somewhere invisible to hide. I think this is where I learned it. I grow weary of people who don't show their real face. I become anxious about shadows and afraid of my own. So I try to show my hands everywhere that I go, and I think that this is where I learned it. That's that poem. Thank you guys.
Thank you so much, Sainey. And everything you said in your lines about the importance of remembering, the memory work that we do as poets. I heard a writer say, I can't remember who, but that writing was not just writing or physical labor. It's also really a kind of soul work. You are remembering in order to create the possibilities for us to continue to live in the world. So thank you for reminding us about those very important ideas. Now I'd like to call up as our next reader, Charlotte Maleski. Here we are. Charlotte is a writer, dancer, and filmmaker, attending high school in Arlington, Virginia. Her first spoken word performance was at an open mic for her middle school, and since then, she has returned there to lead poetry workshops. In 2019, she qualified at the county-wide level for the Optimist International Oratorical Contest. She is an alumna of the University of Virginia's Young Writers Workshop, and her poetry was recognized at the regional level of the 2021 Scholastic Art and Writing Awards. Currently, she serves as Arlington's Youth Poet Laureate of 2021. She was also a member of the 2020 DC Youth Slam team. And I'm also very proud to report that she is one of 24 Virginia young poets in the community that I and my selection committee just picked for this year's first cohort of this new program. So congratulations. So you and Yunseo are part of that first cohort. Congratulations to you both. I can't wait to see all the great things you're gonna do. So Charlotte, please take the stage. How have you been up to? I hope you're fine and doing okay, despite everything that we have to deal with on a daily basis,
Yeah, so. I've learned a lot about like writing and how it like deeply impacts my life, especially over quarantine. And I'm super excited for the Young Poets in the Community opportunity. I'm glad that I get to like extend the opportunities that I got as Youth Poet Laureate into the next year, into June. Over the pandemic, I don't know, I got the Youth Poet Laureate title in February. I went back to middle school, kind of back to my roots. That was probably the first teaching thing I ever did as a poet. And so, yeah, I think over the pandemic, me learning how to teach poetry, one of my martial arts instructors told me once, you don't fully understand or you don't fully know something until you're able to teach it. So in teaching poetry, I've learned a lot about how I write poetry and how to write poetry better. So this first piece is called Lessons on Hiding. 1. Hiding on me looks like long hair and a blouse. I remember the first time I bought a tuck shirt for a band concert, my first excuse to claim a men's section silhouette. When Mom typed women's in the search bar, it was all wrong. It was the wrong half of the department store. It was inauthentic, woven with some blistering feminine fabric, and I hounded her. Why? Why? She spelled it out for me. Female. Chest. Beneath every shirt, my silhouette was still curved. I yearned for iron collar crisp. 2. In math class, I wanted to be the asymptote, straight and forever stretching, but I was the function, a curve destined to find restrictions. I was Zeno's perfect daughter, infinitely nearing that straight-edge body without ever arriving. 3. Once, I was Worm Girl. Those styrofoam boxes of live bait always made it to the garden. Blessed Earth's flesh lived beneath her fingernails, and Worm Girl knew no spades or shovels. She liked to admire the way soil glittered, the bits of mica adding organic glamour to the flower beds. Every fistful of warm dirt was a hug for mother. Hiding on me looks bare. Worm Girl heard her body was dirty and dark, so she rinsed the warmth of Earth's embrace from her skin, washed away her luster with a razor blade, bulldozed her body until it became mine, that of a clean, cold woman. Once, I was Worm Girl. 4. Hiding on me looks like refusing to burn, no matter how my body is whittled into matchstick and struck against the gritty box. At the age girls stopped growing, the hems still climbed, steadily encroaching my covered comfort. At the age I paid more attention to my weight than to my height at the doctor's checkups was when I faced my stomach. In band, we were taught to expand, to let our diaphragms make way for the lungs, twin cavities full of music. I gave myself to this, gifted my breath to the wood, wanting to return the fibers to their trees and sing as if they had the wind in their arms again. I hide like shallow inhales, stowing away the songs in my stomach. 5. Hiding on me looks like embodying half a dichotomy and stuffing the spectrum in my pocket. I hide by shattering my rays into rainbows to prove all the colors are there. I want to be iridescent light, unrefracted, unbent, rapid, blinding. I want to be spilling out of hiding.
Thank you so much. So many things to say about each one's work, but every one of you is just so unique. Your voices, the imagery that you bring. I love the worm imagery so much. It's so organic. Just want to dig my hands in the dirt along with the speaker in your poem. Thank you again. Our next poet is Sasa Aakil, who is the 2021 Montgomery County Youth Poet Laureate. She is also a potter, painter, poet, printmaker, and bassist. Sasa's work has appeared in I Am the Night Sky and Other Reflections by Muslim American Youth, which came out in 2019. She has performed on the Kennedy Center's Millennium Stage, and her work is included in the 2018 Scholastic Best Teen Writing Anthology, as well as on WTOP for the A Man Was Lynched Yesterday project in 2020. Sasa has a brown belt in Tung Soo Do and describes herself as a frequent maker of mistakes. Although, I don't know that that's not something that we all also share. We all frequently make mistakes. So, but of course, we make our own unique mistakes that we learn from in our own unique ways. So yeah. Sasa has been active in the DC art community since age 13 and is now pursuing a degree in fine arts at Montgomery College with hopes of transferring to a historically Black college and university. Hello again, Sasa.
Hello.
I first met you in October, I know, in Northern Virginia for the Gathering of Laureates event. Yeah, and I'm so glad you're here with us today to read. How have you been?
Thank you so much for having me. First of all, I've been good. It's been a wild year and a wild semester, but luckily school is coming to an end. I included the part in my bio about a frequent maker of mistakes because I tend to be a very goofy mistake-making kind of person. And I think that really factors into the kind of work that I create and the way that I move through the world. So I like including that little bit so you can kind of get to know me. So over the course of the pandemic, I've been doing a lot of writing and a lot of creating. Pretty generally, I did a mailing campaign last year, and this year I've really been focusing on being the Youth Poet Laureate. And for me, it's been such an educational experience in learning how to present and talk about myself as a multimedia artist, and also follow the paths of the advocacy that I love while maintaining some level of self-care. In a world that can be very tumultuous. So I hope there's not too much echo in this room. I'm going to begin with a poem that I like to begin all of my readings with as a way to honor the people who came before us and open the floor. So this is a very abbreviated piece. The piece is actually very long, but this piece is called To Name a Few. Emmett Till, George Floyd. You asked me to write a poem as if this isn't enough. Breonna Taylor, Shaheen Mackey, Philando Castile, Michael Brown, Freddie Gray, and Sandra Bland. Maya Shawatza Hall, Megan Hockaday, Natasha McKenna, Ayana Monet, Stanley Jones, Latanya Haggerty, and all of the unspoken women, Jerame C. Reed, Romaine Brisbane, Dante Parker, Izella Ford, John Crawford III, Dontre Hamilton, Victor White III, Unknown, Yvette Smith, Mackenzie J. Cochran, Jordan Baker, Miriam Iris Carey, and all the unspoken, Barrington B.J. Williams, Jonathan Farrell, Sean Bell, to name a few. I can't promise you justice, but I will chronicle your names to make sure they remember you. So that is my first poem, and then I'm going to go into my next. And if I have any more time, I'll do a really, really short one at the end. But I love to open the floor with the names of those people and honor their place in my own creation, but also in all of our history and collective world. This next poem is called Here I Am, and it's sort of my introducing me poem. Here I am, standing in front of you, wishing my fingers could move faster across your fretboards, wishing my fingers fit more comfortably on the edge of this pickup. I swear, you've been a part of me since that time I found that the roundest sounds echo through the chest as if we are both instruments. I had not the space for you then, so I tucked your name away, held it quiet until the day I saw you and could no longer deny. These days, my fingers smell like metal strings and machine heads. And I smile, because I ain't never known an art like this. I'm not all too good at an art like this, but I smile because my first love was the sea. As deep as these bass tones, they seem confused when they see this Black Muslim girl with a guitar strapped to her back, as if they expected me to go quietly through this world they've built, as if they expected me to leave my vocal cords and bass amp on mute, but nah. We turn up and shout the names of everyone we've lost. I think of Brianna when I strum a B note, second fret on the A string, first chord of my heart, for they are a part of me, for you are a part of me, and we do not forget. Your name, their names, in this life, it's taught me that the sin I've known ain't even sin, that there is no paradox in a Black Muslim girl with a bass, a pen, clay, and acrylics. These frets are made for ink-stained hands, hands in prayer, hands in salute. Don't shoot. I believe in God, memorial, and music. Power, prayer, and Blackness, in this be worship. Here I am, standing in front of you, a blue bass named Ocean, reflecting on sound and sea waves, counting tempos, counting names, 1, 2, 3, 4, Emmett, John, Brianna, George. I wish for a world in which they are still living. I wish for a world in which my love for you and skill are the same. I wish for a world in which people walk fully aware of their own heartbeats, knowing that we are all instruments. Thank you so much. I think my time is done, so I'll stop there, but it was a pleasure to perform for all of you.
Thank you. That is so rich and resonant. And yes, naming is an anchoring ritual. Naming is also a ritual of remembrance and of honoring everybody that has made it possible for us to occupy the space that we do. So thank you so much. Our second to last reader, but don't go away because after the readings, we have a little bit of conversation, right? Our next reader is Yunseo Chung, who is a senior at Grafton High School in Yorktown, Virginia. An active Hampton Roads Youth Poet Laureate Ambassador, Yunseo has received a 2021 Scholastic Art and Writing National Gold Medal in Poetry, as well as first place in the Virginia High School League Creative Writing Competition in Poetry. Her poems have appeared in numerous anthologies, and in her free time, Yunseo enjoys traveling and bullet journaling. And like I said, she's also one of the first cohort of 2021 Virginia Young Poets and Community that I had the honor of being a part of the selection process of. So Yunseo, welcome. Can't wait to hear your words and your poems.
Hi, everyone. Like everyone said, it's been a crazy past 2 years because of COVID, but I think more personally for me, it's been about college apps. First of all, they've been super stressful, but also dealing with like growing up and the idea that I'm not going to live here in a year. It's been crazy. So recently I've been writing shorter poems about the months that go by to try to capture it. So that's what I'm going to be reading today, September and then October. My first one is called September Obituary. Neptune rose westbound by mooring bones, mourning a wretched gold. Go home and take your furniture, cherry wood. Remember we cut them, put them to bed with our knives, just as cold night will to us. Look, the sky half caged. Neptune will be gone by morning. And then my October poem is titled Rome. Bite into overripe apricot, taste expired and overdue. Mellow orange welcomes me like a mother calls her daughter, 47, home. Like a dog, bloody-mouthed, grieves the bird, safe, asleep on the dirt. My Pompeii, my Bastille, my little Rome. Does it hurt to remember? Did you become who you wanted to be? And do you know that you were always meant to be more? Brown rot plagues like bones sewn in stone. What a disappointing end to the glory. But at least, can you still fly, my little sparrow, sleeping sound in your useless makeshift nest of earth? Thank you.
Thank you so much. I don't know about our viewers, but I feel like I want to run away and start writing too. Again, for today, I try to write every day, and I think I managed to do that. But hearing your words is just so inspiring, all of you. Thank you. It's such a gift just to be in the presence of poetry, in the presence of poets who are also, passionate about language in the same way that we are, crazy people who are crazy in love with words and language and how to get the image right, how to get the sound right, how to give words to the things that we feel we don't even have words for yet. So that's the thing, right? Our calling of sorts. Our final reader is Reed Williams. Reed Williams is a trans poet from Virginia Beach who is currently serving as Hampton Roads Youth Poet Laureate, 2021, right? 2021 Youth Poet Laureate, yeah. She is a second-year student at the University of Virginia studying English, literature, and government. She started writing poetry as a form of protest literature against recent government efforts to limit the rights of trans youth across the country. Her work focuses on promoting inclusivity through vulnerability and openness about the experience of growing up as a transgender youth. Welcome, Reed.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I guess these past 2 years really, living in a pandemic have been crazy. I graduated high school and started college completely online. It's very overwhelming, but I've also had plenty of amazing opportunities, such as working as a congressional intern with my representative, Elaine Luria, as well as competing in Brave New Voices with the Hampton Roads Slam team. And I've also rediscovered my love of reading, which has been very, very nice. And I would just like to kind of like round out that introduction, I guess, with saying that like poetry has been my way of not only protesting, but being open and processing my memories. And it's just overall been a vehicle for personal growth for me, especially over these past 2 years. So the first work that I will be reading is called Sestina pour la libération des toilettes. My old friend Panic curdles in my throat. Sitting in office, hands in lap, distinct discomfort. Where do you go to the bathroom? Swallow my pride, bow my head. Though I am a woman, I lack precedent. I resort to pleading. Please let me use the toilet where I belong. The nurse's bathroom is where you belong. And so her knife plunged into my throat. Over cries for justice, we hear not her guilty pleading, life and death. This is no matter of mere discomfort, but I am somehow a danger to another urinating woman. Close the door. I am barred from the bathroom. A hero's journey every time I use the bathroom. Because of how I was born, I can never belong. No matter how I look or act, they think me not a woman, despite the pearls which decorate my throat. When my history is known, I only produce discomfort. Peers hold no pity for my lowly pleading. As plaintiff, I must amend my pleading, lacking due process for my duties in the bathroom. Forced apology, exert the supremacy of my discomfort. I must assure you, it's with the girls that I belong. Stammering my reasoning, it catches in my throat. The floor tilts in the case of 14-year-old V, authoritative woman. Though I am entirely at the mercy of this woman, her blunt attempts at intimidation seem to be pleading, the begging of a tired employee audible in her throat. But still, I am the victim, seeking only the woman's bathroom. Despite broader conflicts, the fault still to her does belong. She chose not to overcome societal discomfort, but I refuse to retrogress or embrace discomfort. I am a revolutionary. I am a woman. I will not be relegated where I do not belong, engage in self-defense rather than groveling or pleading. I cannot be hidden away in some nurse's bathroom. Though I am alone, the wisdom of thousands echoes from my throat. I long to hug those other children lost to pleading against some woman in discomfort in our bathroom. We belong. No longer will you ignore the protests from my throat. And then my second poem is titled Gunkle Talent Show. Before I was estrogen, vagina, breast, female woman, I was a gay man at 3 years old with a therapist I don't remember. My mom took me to gay camp. My sister tagged along. My family didn't travel really unless we were going to gay camp. Then we'd road trip to DC or fly to Wisconsin. The dress, which sits on my bed, was the dress I wore for the talent show. Born to be a star with my lime green Crocs and unfortunate haircut that I didn't want. It's all there in the photography book, specially published The Gay Camp Life. Commodified little freaks, intersectional, inspirational, award-winning little boys worthy of pity, with makeup and glitter. In a dusty barn, my gunkle, gay uncle, who's not my actual uncle, decorated for the big show. Peacock feathers and industrial fans for dramatic flair on the runway, of course. Wig snatched, lip gloss stained, slay queen, tear the house down. He was supposed to be my role model. A real life, actual adult gay man, but I wasn't him. I was the woman smoking a cigarette outside the gay bar on a boardwalk in Delaware. In a time before my gunkle bought my first ear piercings and I didn't wear bikinis on beaches, and my gunkle turned up his nose, probably not even realizing his initial distaste with a woman like me. Thank you.
Ooh, thank you so much. And the first poem that you read was a sestina too. So I'm like, that just blows my mind. I wish I could see it in actual print to appreciate it again a second time. But thank you to all our readers. Thank you, Reed. And I really love some of the things that you said in your poem about vulnerability. And maybe we can start sort of a little bit of our conversation, taking that idea and bringing it to the idea of how do we think of poetry and how it makes us more aware, perhaps, than other forms of communication or even consumable culture. For instance, the news, social media, how these things somehow can't do that, but that poetry brings us somehow to this other place where we are both vulnerable and also not. Maybe I feel like vulnerability is not necessarily a weakness, but I think that it can be a strength too. So I'd like to throw that just out there, and anybody can just jump into the conversation and pick it up from there. And I just like to hear around the table what you all think about that. And I invite people in our audience to drop questions. And I think Susan at the Muse is able to transfer them to the chat so we can see them if there are any questions. So how do you think of this idea of poetry both being able to make us more aware than other forms of communication nowadays can make us aware?
I suppose that when I consume poetry as opposed to other forms of media, it's just less blaring. I don't know, for some reason it's just able to cut deeper than news or statistics or social media sometimes, because it's created with different intent. It's poetry can be created with the intent to cut deep, but the way that it does so is artful, and those other mediums don't have the lens of art. And so I think that all art cuts deeper and makes us more aware, and allows us to do the more informational things, read and be educated. But the entry point is art, because it's it's created with feeling, and it's created with a different intent. Rather than to inform, it's created for people to feel with.
Right. Oh, I can relate to that so much. And I think what you're saying is what I also see to be the case in terms of other types of communication are maybe more transactional in nature. They have something that they need in order to make that transaction complete. But poetry, I feel, doesn't really ask for these things necessarily. It can take us there, but it just asks us to be there in front of it so we can feel and think about the moment which it brings to us. For me, it's just like the whole package is delivered in one instantaneous experience. Intellect, emotion, image, everything is all together. And that's, for me, it's why it's so effective. And I don't know what the experience of other poets here is, but I really liked the sound of some of the things that Charlotte has brought to the table around this question. Anybody else want to talk about their experience in that? I mean, people say, oh, there are no words. I have no words. Things happen and people say things like, I can't even, I have no words. But poetry, do you feel that poetry can go there? How does it do that? How do you do that? And how do you learn to listen, maybe, for that? Sasa?
Well, I think Serena had her hand before me, but I also do have
Oh,
a question.
okay. Sorry.
Go ahead, Serena.
Okay, I'll keep it short then. I was just thinking back to, yes, so Sasa, I know Sasa had her hand up before too, so yes, we'll keep it rolling around the table. I think I was thinking back to what Luisa said earlier about how poetry takes time. And I think that is an important part of it, since all other forms of communication under a capitalistic culture are happening at such rapid speed and they're very production focused. I think reading and writing poetry both take a lot of time. You can return to a poem over and over again. And I think that being slow or taking your time under capitalism is resistance by itself, and it allows for some possibilities that can't be seen otherwise or don't really get to breathe under these other production-based consumable forms of communication. And as for the question you just asked, Luisa, I think metaphor in poetry does a lot of work very quickly. And it kind of creates such a high potential for discovering previously unfathomable things. It has a power to kind of stretch beyond language, beyond the words we already have, by creating images that, before you encounter them, you don't have the language to imagine. So I think that this ability to create new meaning beyond the language that's already available to us is really unique to poetry.
Yes, I completely agree with what you just said, and it just sounds so true. Sasa, would you like to follow up on that?
Yeah, of course. I think one thing that's very unique and powerful about poetry as an art form, but also just a form of communication, is that as poets, while we're writing it, oftentimes we're trying to make things sound as beautiful and as poetic, as amazing as possible, but we're also, in a lot of instances, trying to be concise. And so it requires this precision in language that in a lot of other areas, people simply don't think about or don't feel necessary to have. And so when we poets go and sit down to write, we're using these words that are so precise and convey very specific things. And so when they're heard, people know what we're talking about. And even in instances where poets try to discuss things that often don't have words for them, we talk about emotion, we talk about color, we talk about feeling. And still with that precision of language, with our like very specific cherry picking from this dictionary of words we know, we're able to convey very unique concepts in a way that a lot of other art forms don't do. And so a lot of other writings don't do. So the power in it, I think, comes from the precision and like the necessity of being concise and precise.
And that level of specificity, I guess, is really a form of making sure that we get it right. We need to get it right. We need language to do the job that we give it to do. And sometimes those are very hard tasks that we ask our poems to do for us. And so it is very important that we have the right kind of language for that. Trinity, and then Reed. Trinity, I think your mic is off.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Hi. I was just saying that I definitely agree. I think poetry has such power because people see themselves in it. And I think that relatableness of the poems that we make help people see not only where they are, but where they can be. So poetry bridges that gap and inspires people to kind of understand that the world really can be changed and that they can be changed. And it inspires people to continue on. Because honestly, during a time especially like this, there's just such a loss of hope.
Oops, we lost you for a bit. A little bit of a...
So people seeing themselves in poems and seeing themselves in different forms of media.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think we get the gist of what you're saying, Trinity. You're freezing up a little bit towards the end, but I think we got what you were saying. Reed, you had your hand up earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to build off the idea that poetry as an art form, I think, is like both translation and creation. It has like an innate ability to translate emotion and experience into content in a way that maybe less artistic forms of literature can't. And I think it just is really able to allow the audience and the reader to see through the poet's eyes rather than their own. And I think with that, especially incorporating like ideas of vulnerability and personal experience, has real power to change the hearts and minds of people that would generally consider themselves immovable in their opinions.
Right, and it's striking to me that you say immovable, because the immovability of one from a position is really something that prevents one from experiencing a different fullness of perception, or even to feel that considering another point of view is possible. So that's absolutely right. We have a question from our audience member, Vicky Greco. You are also very talented poets with so many poems already in you and in your future. Thanks for sharing. Who are your favorite poets and who inspire you and who you recommend to others? So this should be exciting. Who are you reading also? Who are your favorite poets? Who do you recommend to others? Are there poets that you have just discovered that you are so excited about? Do tell us. I'm also eager to know.
Okay, for me, Jill Jordan, Gwendolyn Brooks, Lucille Clifton, Sonia Sanchez.
Yeah, yeah,
Top
yeah. And what about our other poets?
I always say one of my favorite poets is Langston Hughes because I think he has that concise and precise down, very simple poetry that conveys so much. So he's always my very top. And then also like Sainey, Lucille Clifton.
Yeah,
He's one of my favorite, and Clint Smith, actually, who's a living poet. He's also one of my all-time favorite poets.
yeah, yeah. Living poets, of course. I mean, just the idea of the living voices of poets in our midst. There's so much poetry being written. It's such a great time to be alive in the world of poetry, right? Serena says, Arcelis Kermay, Ocean Vuong, Audre Lorde, Mary Oliver, June Jordan, K-Ming Chang, Shira Ehrlichman, and Safia El Hilo. All of those I love them too. Anybody else want to add to the list? Usually I read a lot of new things in a semester when I teach poetry. Yeah, read, go ahead.
I'm currently taking a history of English literature class. So I've been taking a lot of inspiration from like more historical poets, especially like Lady Mary Wortley Montagu, and like poets that wrote in specific forms. And I just think like the development of like older forms of poetry and turning them into like almost like revolutionary pieces when they take on subjects that are like kind of controversial or are like raising new subjects that like nobody had talked about before. So like I think like the works of Shakespeare too have been really inspiring. How he like wrote love sonnets about a man and also like Black woman. So that's where I've been getting a lot of inspiration from lately.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I also think it's so important to think about things like radical progression as not just an arrow going to the future, but we learn so much about things from the past, forms that we have inherited. And of course, we use the lens of our own particular time and place in history to look at these things and to, do new interventions with them. And that's always exciting to me. An anonymous attendee, I can't really tell who this is, but is writing always enjoyable? Or do you write with different purposes or from different emotions? So that's an interesting idea. Is writing always enjoyable? Or do you write with different purposes from different emotions? Who wants to tackle that question? Yeah, Yunseo.
I think it's not really always enjoyable. I think it starts from a point where you really want to write something and you really want to get this idea across. But then when you hit that roadblock where it's not coming out like you wanted, that's frustrating. But also if you're writing about something maybe like traumatic, and you have to really get into that kind of feeling to flesh it out. So it's helpful to do that, but it might not be pleasant.
That's true. But I guess even if it's not pleasant, there is something that compels you to, I guess for me at least, to face up to it. And my preferred medium of facing up to something, even if it's difficult, is, I found out, poetry is the preferred form for me for like talking with these things that are difficult to get to wrap my mind or even my feelings around, and to not hide from them. Anybody else want to add to that? What's it like for you? Is it enjoyable? Do we talk about an enjoyable writing process? How would you describe your writing process is perhaps another way we can frame that question. Sainey, were you raising your hand or was it Sasa? Sainey, go ahead, Sainey. I think your mic is off.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. Honestly, like I come to my writing from a lot of different angles and emotions because I find that poetry is one of the ways that I do tend to like process the world. Sometimes it can be frustrating when like I don't feel like the piece is ready, but like I feel this need to express something that's sitting inside me. And so sometimes I do feel that kind of frustration of that emotion or that concept that is still like not fully fleshed. So that can be a point of like frustration, but it's also exciting, and it kind of
Right.
I guess it pushes me.
Yeah, so it's a starting point, right? Yes, so it's important also. Yes, Sasa?
I was going to answer the question. I'd say, like, my really short one-word answer, one sentence answer, is that poetry isn't always enjoyable. Writing poetry isn't always enjoyable, but it's always necessary. So for me, I come to it, it's like everyone has been saying, like you come to poetry to process the world in a lot of different ways. And so oftentimes I'll come to poetry from a place of love and a place of contentment, or I'll come from a place of anger and a place of pain. And the process of writing is a release of that. And so that is enjoyable to release it, but also sometimes you sit down and you write and it's not what you wanted, and you're not getting out the emotions that you wanted to get out. And so it can be frustrating and it can be fun and it can suck, but it's always something that needs to be done. It's always something that we poets are called to. So I say that's why we keep doing it, because we must.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I so agree. Serena has something in the chat, and I am also echoing these same sentiments. Something I'm thinking of, says Serena, from reads and my comments. Jericho Brown has said that Frank O'Hara and Walt Whitman is his ancestor, whether they would like it or not, thinking about how we can look back and co-opt poets and poetry that might not have been kind to us, or that might not even have considered us worthy recipients of this so-called tradition. But we claim access, right? We need to establish that we have a line to that. And even if it may not be a tradition that has been welcoming or a tradition that has represented us fully, we also need to know that those things exist. We need to know as much as we can about those traditions. So I truly, I'm so glad that you dropped that in there. I see, oh, I'm so happy. One of the questions is from another one of the 2021 Virginia Young Poets in the Community awardees, Stephanie Gomez. Congratulations, thank you. I can't see you, but I can see your question. And Stephanie says, I love all of your poems, everybody. They were extremely wonderful. Do you think one day you would publish your poems? How can poems change other people's perspectives on life? And I know some of you have already been sending your poems out into the world, but maybe rather than considering publication, what maybe are the places that you decide to send your work? What's your own like thinking process? What would you like your words to find in terms of publication? And she asks, how do you think poems can change other people's perspectives on life? Very important question, especially since a lot of us are involved in a certain type of advocacy work and using poetry as the medium for doing that. So when does that moment of change, what's your experience? Maybe you have some experiences that you can share, or anecdotes where you actually were in a moment where you could see that change happen, even if just a tiny little bit, maybe? Does anybody have some stories about that?
I'm going to answer the second half of the question because I think it's the funner half of the question. So for me, I think poetry can change people's perspectives and can change people's ideas. And I believe that comes from the same, I've been repeating myself, but the same precision and the same conciseness, because the nature of this poetry becomes kind of like a strike to the heart. Like it becomes very, very precise, very aimed, very like specific tool. And so when sometimes when people hear these things, they are immediately moved, and sometimes they won't know why they're moved, and they'll have tears come to their eyes, or all of these different reactions that people have when their emotions are touched in a way that only poetry can. And so I think it does change perspectives, and it changes lives, because people go through these like epiphany moments, or even they'll be, I know something that Sainey likes to say is that poetry is a tool for empathy. And so it'll make someone realize that you're human as well, or it'll make them realize that they've been making a mistake. It'll make them realize that they've been doing everything right. And so it's this amazing like wow. And I will say that I've never seen it happen in front of me, but I do believe that it does happen. For other people's work, I've never seen it happen from my work. But
Right. Well, I'm sure it is happening right now. Serena, yes, your hand is up, your hand icon. Go
Yes.
ahead.
Oh, first I'll just say, Sasa, your words just changed me. So like, yeah, a few minutes ago. So I would say,
so much. Wow.
no, of course. No, I'm serious. I think that,
Yeah.
yes, for sure. I'm sure many other people here can relate. I think, well, first I'll talk about the publishing part. I think over the past year, I've realized I should question traditional avenues of publishing, or what's considered success and what's considered getting your words seen. I had the opportunity to read one of my poems at a protest rally this past year, and that was a really important experience for me. And I think that for me, what's most important is that my poems find the audience that needs to hear them and that my words were intended for. And I need to think more carefully about what method or what vessel can take my words where they need to go. And that might not be publication in a literary journal or a book or something like that. Or it might be. I think it depends. And I'm still trying to figure out how I think about that and how I determine where my poems should go. I think that's going to be like a lifelong kind of negotiation. And as for the second part, I would second the precision, but I think it's like poetry is precise in naming something in people. I think people often already feel a certain way, or they're already leaning a certain way, and poetry, sometimes they read a poem, they're like, oh, this is how I was thinking, this is how I was feeling. It has this power of naming. And I think that also means that it can't, if it's not already there, the poem can't make it there, if that makes sense. Like if people feel like, if they have empathy for you and they feel like you're human, if like the laws and the system still don't treat you as human, the poem can't do that much. So my answer to like how can poems change people's perspectives, or how can poems change your world, is often always, well, it can't really, it can sort of, but there's a lot of other things we need to do to change the world, and poems is just a small part of that.
Yes, so nice. Thank you. Ayana, you've got your hand up. Go ahead.
Sure. So one thing that I learned, especially when I started doing more spoken word poetry, is I learned the power that words can really carry. So whether it's through paper or through like the words that you actually speak when you perform, it definitely has an impact on people, whether you realize it or not. So whether you can see, them change their mind, maybe through like their facial expression or whatnot, or whether you can't see it, but whole time they walk away with a different perspective and a different mindset than what they came in with. So I just think one of my goals, especially when writing, is just to continue to realize the power that words carry and use that to my advantage, especially when advocating for different things. And so I believe that poetry is definitely plays a part in really promoting change. But of course, there's more things that we need to do as a community to ultimately change the world. But I just think the power of words and the power of poetry is always impressive to me.
Agreed. So I wonder if all of you could talk a little bit about what some of your current projects are, or the issues that are most important to you at this point in time that you see yourselves being able to kind of carry out through this role that you have as either a Youth Poet Laureate or a Youth Poetry Ambassador. What are some specific things that you're currently engaged in, and how are you doing that? And we can just, talk among ourselves, and this, I'm sure, is also of interest to everybody that's watching right now. What are you doing? What current projects do you have? And I know, looking at all the applications that we got for the Virginia Young Poets in the Community, there are just so many amazing projects that young poets want to do. And they're not just a traditional, I want to stand up in a cafe and read poems and invite a bunch of people and make flyers for that. It's so many different kinds of things. Charlotte, tell us about your proposal. That question didn't come from me. I don't think.
Yeah. No, I see you, Sasa. I'm tentative to talk about my proposal because it's something that like I have already talked about with people in my county, but the idea at its root, which is going to grow over time and needs to grow before it goes into effect. At its root is just like letting people speak, and that's kind of what I wanted my goal as Youth Poet Laureate of 2021 to be, is because I think in my position as a person of immense privilege, the best thing I could do with this title was to have this microphone that I've been given and pass it on to the people that need it most and make good infrastructure for the people that come after me. Because I was trying to rope in, as many deserving poets as I could into the process for the 2022 Youth Poet Laureate position, searching for poets from marginalized communities that could really benefit from this title. So my proposal, as it was like 2 or 3 months ago, there was a kind of, maybe the folks from the DMV might have actually read about this, but there was like a pretty well publicized sexual assault incident at a local high school in Arlington, at a homecoming football game, and the whole county, heard it and felt it and reacted to it. There were walkouts at, I want to say, all 5 high schools, and I don't know, that was just a moment of like, I don't know, I see these spikes in Arlington's youth's awareness of things that are going on in the world and in their community, and I want that to last, and I want that to like be official and have like structural support for it. And so my proposal was to just have a workshop that acknowledged and addressed that incident and the things that came, and like the protests and calls for change that came after it, and just providing a space that was, like cognizant of like not becoming a group therapy space, but at the same time centering the voices of the people who like spoke out the loudest and that were most deeply affected by that homecoming week incident and the response that followed. So that was my proposal. It was to essentially have a workshop that was caring for the needs of the students right after that, kind of modeled after.
Right.
If any of y'all have been in touch with Split This Rock, they did similar things after January 6th, over the pandemic, during the presidential election, just spaces that cared for the people most affected by that and like serving their needs through writing.
Yes. I look forward to all the amazing results and intersections of participation in your project as we move forward into the new year. So I'm really eager to hear how that goes along, and more power to you. Would anyone else like to add anything? Earlier, serving their needs through writing. Yes, absolutely. Earlier I saw in the chat somebody is also here who is part of the 2021 Young Poets and Community. I think I saw Aderonke Adeleke. So congratulations to you. I see your name in the chat. I'm glad you're here. I don't know how many of our other young poets who won are watching. I hope you're all watching. I sent out the link to everybody. But this is an amazing group of poets. And could you talk about what's up ahead for you before we wind down tonight's conversation? What is up in the works for you? What's the next thing up?
I can jump in.
Sure.
So as part of my year long term as poet laureate of Youth Poet Laureate of Montgomery County, I've been hosting a monthly poetry workshop for young people. And so the theme or the title is A Poem for a Poem. And so what happens is that these people come into the Zoom space, because we're all on Zoom still. And I share a poem, and in response, they write a poem, sort of like an after with prompts based off of the poem I share. And for me, that's been a really rewarding experience, because I get to see what other people can build and what other people can take away from the words that I say, which is very, very gratifying in a lot of ways, but also makes me take a step back and look at what I'm saying and think of all the different ways it can be interpreted, and make sure that at least most of those ways are what I actually mean. So that's been one great thing. My next one is on December 9th. So that's a plug if you want to sign up. But I've also been thinking
about link. You can drop it in the chat.
Link. Okay, I can type that.
Go ahead. I interrupted.
So my other project, this is kind of a dream project that I haven't been able to start yet, just because of time. But I have this dream for a project that centers teaching softness and teaching kindness to young Black kids who oftentimes walk through the world with a need to have their guard up. And so starting workshops where young Black kids get together and write poems and love poems, kind of along the lines of what Serena was saying, and then go on the streets and hand out flowers with little poems attached to random people, just for the sake of learning how to do that kind of thing. And so that's my dream project. I would have proposed it to you, Luisa, but I simply do not have the time to implement it yet. That is the hope.
Project. Yeah, I just came from teaching a short workshop this fall for the Muse, and the workshop had no other agenda than to gather poets together in the workshop space, and we all figure out how to write towards this idea of joy. Writing toward joy. And that was just it. No other agenda. How do we do this? It seems so hard, right? Why is it so hard? But we want this so much. So that I would teach that again. I also have a lot of interest in environmental concerns and issues. So I'm trying to see how I can develop some other kinds of collaborations with poets, hopefully statewide. The hard thing about, being youth or whatever, poet laureate, is nobody has a guidebook for you. You kind of have to write it as you go along, right? But then the next one that comes along is going to have so much to build on, so much of tradition, so much of love and trust and what you've given. So for that, I'm very grateful to everyone and the work you're doing. Anybody else want to talk about what else is up ahead before we kind of, come to a close? Yes, Serena?
I can share. I'll plug something. I realized mentioned the WOW project earlier, but I didn't explain what it was. So this is my opportunity. The WOW project is an organization based out of the oldest store left in NYC Chinatown. It's an organization that uses art and activism to fight for and preserve and grow Chinatown's creative culture during this time of rapid change. I've been part of this organization or been involved since I was a fellow in their RR, or Resist, Recycle, Regenerate program in 2019, which is a youth arts and activism program. I'm now the program coordinator, so I'm helping with the logistics and the budgeting and everything so that the program can keep running for more generations. I'm gonna plug the link to the WOW project in the chat. If y'all wanna check it out. I think I've been thinking a lot about how I feel like Asian American politics and like political consciousness is still very much in its infancy, especially after this past few years. So I think in this time, it's really important to me to have kind of guiding lights, people that I trust or organizations that I trust, who I feel can see a path forward that I believe in. And for the WOW project, which is queer-led, trans-led, woman-led, and has an abolitionist view of the future, and is fighting for it through arts, that's an organization that is truly like after my own heart. So I'm really, really passionate about this place and the people there. So if y'all want to go to the website and look at the work they're doing, that would be great.
Yes, thank you. And everyone here who is part of the panel, if you have websites or resources that you'd like to share with our audience, please just drop the URLs in the chat And maybe you can also send them to me in an email. I'll put them all together and share them with whoever would like these resources. Maybe we can put them up on the Muse Facebook page related to the event, and people can just go there and find them. So yes, is there anything else anyone would like to share with our audience? I really appreciate your sharing your time, so generous with your visions, your words, your experiences, and I wish you all the best. May all your projects thrive. May they lead to other poetry projects that spread so much more good in the world. There's a comment from one of the audience, Jeffrey Hecker, poet too. I'm so impressed and inspired by you all. Thank you for helping us all through the pandemic. The positive energy you're providing is not lost on us. Yes, optimism used to be political activism. Thanks for bringing it back around. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you, our audience, for spending part of your Saturday evening with us. I hope to bring a few more of these conversations and readings to the general watching public who are interested in poetry, who would like to learn more about poetry. I plan to present a short series of similar readings and conversations with a few groups of our new 2021 Virginia Young Poets in the Community. So watch out for me bugging you by email, scheduling emails and me saying, let's do this, we can do this, I'd love to do this, I'd love to hear you. And thank you very much again. Yes, let's give all our panelists another round of snaps. So much love. Thank you so much.